Welcome to NRL 360 Rugby League from every angle, brought to you by Fort Everest. Joining me yet again, the great Goden Tallis.
Hey,
it's been the journos in Buzz Rothfield and Brent Reid, and we've got West Tigers CEO Shane Richardson coming up after that win yesterday. Gordy, that'll be fun.
Yeah, he's been around the game for a long time, so looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. Yeah. Panthers are very successful at the Panthers and the Bunnies.
Yeah, first win in 7 weeks, the West Tigers, desperately needed. Can't wait to hear Richo explain. Lachlan Galvin, Talon De Silva out the door. And I really want to learn not just why they left, but why they wanted to leave, what they didn't see at the West Tigers. It'll be interesting.
We'll ask him all those questions. You want to stick around, Buzz?
I'd love to, mate.
Should get
me and Richo, we go back a long way.
Yeah, you do.
We've had our ups and downs.
It's been a rocky road, Oh,
well, mate, rugby league journalism is not a popularity contest.
Why did I speak?
Well, it's not. And when people go through rough spots, you've got to report on it.
Okay. You said ups and downs, Buzz.
Thanks, Phil.
Mainly ups or mainly downs?
Ask Richo when he gets on.
Okay, I'll ask
He'll probably say downs.
Reedy, the Raiders, they're on fire, leading the competition. They got 2 buys in hand. They had a good win on the weekend. Skipped 2 points clear of the Melbourne Storm, who have overtaken the Bulldogs, and you had them finishing 14th, Reedy, this year.
You know what? I'm still 3 spots better off than our mate Mick Carrianis, who had it for the spoon. So
geez, you're throwing him
I've
under the
got
bus.
him covered. Well, he had him for the spoon, fair dinkum. Yeah. Oh, they've done amazing. The minor premiership's basically a fait accompli now, I think, and they're going to be hard to toss, real hard to toss.
Well, they're going good, aren't they, Buzz?
Yeah, I'm trying to work out if they can win a comp, because you look at those 2 front rowers, Tarpany and Big Papa, you look at the strength they got on the edges. They got a stack of edges. They got Ethan Strange, the genius at 5'8". The half's a good player. And their back 5 is so much speed, and they're adventurous.
KO Weeks is unbelievable.
He's a superstar.
He was superb. Nearly 300 metres, 3 tries, 2 of those tries, highlights reels for the rest of the year. Now, you said it, but I want to get you two in this now. Can they win the competition?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Why? Because they're young, they got 2 front rowers, they can knock down the front door. Their halves are playing with a lot of confidence, and they got speed, they got X-factor, they got hard-working back rowers, and that's what you need, and they got confidence. I think they've done enough through the year that when they go into the big games, they'd be confident to win them.
Well, I think it's wide open. It's obviously wide open. I think the team that beats Melbourne, if they can, will win the comp. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're in the grand final with Melbourne the way they're going at the moment. They're just, as Gordy said, they've just got all the components that you need. Can they win it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they can win it, yeah.
Okay.
The big thing is Braith is youth. And the fact they've only had 1 bye, they're so young, they're so fit. And I used that word adventurous before. Ricky doesn't shackle anyone. They play to their natural ability. And they seem to recover at that age quicker than some of the older football. I don't know. I think they're a chance.
So they're great to watch, very exciting to watch. And you mentioned youth, and they've got their recruitment right, which is very difficult for Canberra for different reasons, but they've nailed this, haven't they?
Well, you go, boss.
I was going to say, if you needed to print in a newspaper the names of every knockback Ricky Stewart has had in the last 10 years, you'd need an 8-page lift out. They have gone after so much big-name talent, and outside of the Englishmen they've signed, they have not been able to deliver in the national capital. However, they changed their tactics, and they've got, 6 or 7 New South Wales under-19s there?
From a couple of years ago, yeah. I mean, it's paid off for them, hasn't it? England and going young has paid off for them in spades. I mean, Tamale, Ethan Strange are 2 of the guys they picked from that New South Wales under-19 team. KO Weeks they got from Manly, where he wasn't necessarily wanted and didn't really have a spot there. So they've been very intelligent with their recruiting.
Why won't players go there? Why are they hesitant? Is it the weather? Is it...
Well, if you have a choice of living near the beach at Cronulla or eastern suburbs or Manly or, you know, in a town, it's more... It's cold there, mate, as you know. And it's
very cold, mate.
It is, and you know they have had trouble for that very reason, attracting good footballers there.
Playing like this though will help them get players across the line. If they can play like this and compete and be in the finals every year, players will want to go there and be part of it.
They're going to get stronger too. They've got people like Matty Nicholson to come back. They'll get Hudson Young back after the Origin. Those edges are terrific.
Injury, Braith.
I'd love to see that 8-page lift out one day, Buzz.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of knockbacks, mate.
Yeah, I know. After another disappointing loss, Dragons coach Shane Flanagan bristled at questions over his halfback, but he did have support from Ricky Stewart.
Did the booing from the crowd towards Kyle spur on the team at all?
Never heard it.
What
What would the crowd be booing Kyle for?
Just the kicking the conversion early in the game? They were quite passionate, this Canberra
I think
crowd.
they do that. Yeah, well, that's good on. That's going to happen everywhere.
What is this sort of? I mean, the win last week and then this week, but you came so close, but you should have won it.
I think it's a disgrace how you guys in the media are just absolutely bashing a kid. I've got a son playing, and that's my biggest fear. You people, not him, but the media. I think it's a disgrace what his so-called supporters, the so-called Dragon supporters, the social media, the bullshit that he has to listen to and cop. I know his old man will handle it, but it'd be torture for his mother and his sisters.
Shane Flanagan there, fired up over that question about his son, and then Ricky Stewart has leapt to the defence, and a strong defence of his mate Shane and his son Kyle. What do we make of that?
I think it's been unfair blaming the media, because I think all we've done on this show in particular is debate the merits of whether Kyle should be in the team necessarily or how Kyle's playing. I think, you know, I've said over and over again, I don't think Kyle Flanagan's the issue at the Dragons. And the issue is that they've got guys playing New South Wales Cup who are playing really well, and you've got to reward those guys. I mean, that's debating form and players and whether they should be in the team. It's not being critical beyond the bounds of what we normally do.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit torn on this because I don't think Kyle is an elite halfback, and I don't think the Dragons do, and I think his dad's on record as saying that. And Tim Wattsford, their new chief executive, and I rate Tim Wattsford, I had a couple of conversations with him, and you picked up the piece on what he said on the podcast last week. Kyle was never hired by St George Illawarra to be an elite halfback. They saw him more originally as a 14, someone who could play hooker, half, 5'8", come off the bench.
Yeah.
There was a shortage there. Lachlan Galvin was dropped early in the year. Glover was going okay. They haven't been able to make it back into the side. Yeah. That's a debate that's out there among their fans. It's got very nasty on social media. Yeah. And look, I do feel for the family, as Ricky said. It's not
I think
nice.
it's more the social media, not the actual media.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening on social media is disgusting, Braith. And no one should condone what's been said about Kyle and his dad on social media because it's beyond the pale. So, but I think the media debate is valid.
Yeah, there's a fair point you made too. They did buy him as a 14 or 9, and now he's landed at 7.
And the problem Kyle's had, and what's fired up the debate, is that week after week, the New South Wales Cup side with Lachlan Galvin and Jonah Glover have been winning football games.
They did it again on the weekend. And Joey Johns messaged me too and said they were both outstanding.
I think it's fair, what people are saying.
The social media
Yeah, just
stuff?
because your dad coaches you, it doesn't mean that it goes away. Just imagine if Luke Brooks' dad coached him.
Yeah, but I think some of the stuff on social media, Gordon,
Brad
is just
Arthur's
going
son,
too far.
Brad Arthur's son went through it. Kevy, yeah, but we're not over the top.
No, we're not. No, the media's
fans,
not. No.
Yeah, but the Dragons fans have always been like that. They used to carry coffins around the ground, and they've been pretty nasty for a long. No, like they have for a long time. But
who's the coffin for?
Oh, there was one of the officials one day. But you know what? The thing is with Kyle, the poor kid, is he couldn't make it at the Dogs. He couldn't make it at the Roosters. So there's history there. So when you go there and you watch it, and every halfback's targeted. And when your dad coaches you, it's always going to be around. Because it was with Jake Arthur, it was with Billy Walters, and now it is with this kid. And the only way it's going to go away is if he changes clubs and makes it without his dad. And that's it. And that's the end of the story.
No, that's all fair comment. You know, it really is. And it's a difficult one. And as I've said before,
it's sad.
Unless you're John Lang and you've got Martin Lang, unless you're Ivan Cleary and you've got Nathan and they are automatic selections every day of the week, it can get difficult. It can be.
It seems to be getting ugly at the Dragons, or is it? Online attacks, DeBellin hugging influencer, alleged try celebration bullying on the weekend with Denny Widler's article from the Sydney Morning Herald. What was this all about?
Well, there's been some try celebrations after tries that some of the players have done. Basically, I think it's imitating a burger, which is apparently a term which I didn't know about.
Burger,
it's a derogatory term for a Derek or someone who's
Or just
a Derek.
They call each other, you're a burger, you're an imbecile.
But the club said that this is a term of endearment at the club. And you know they've obviously spoken to the players
He's
about it. And they
serious.
don't have an issue.
Yeah,
I mean, if
It's
you know,
not an
if,
issue, is it getting called a burger?
well, if
I've been called worse than a
what has
burger.
been suggested,
Cheeseburger.
What is it?
if what's been suggested in the article was true, it's disgraceful, Braith. It's disgusting. And in the club,
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
I spoke to the manager of Damien Cook today. I didn't want to pester Cookie. He checked it out with Cookie. You've seen Cookie speak about the Flanagan situation. He insists, and he did one too, Cookie. It's an in-house G-up thing. You're burger, you gibber. That's what it is.
I find it very hard to believe this is happening. Very hard to believe.
Yes.
And, you know, I think unless you've got solid evidence of that, because this is personal, because it's all alleged, right? But you're talking about it is personal because it's his teammates, and suggesting that he's being like visibly called a burger by his teammates on the field while he's standing next to them, and you got no real evidence of that apart from hearsay. That's it. I mean, like we talk about being critical of players, and Kyle's no exception to that in terms of his performance, and critiquing him and maybe being unhappy with his form and that. But this is a bit different. This is personal, and this is what we don't like. This is what probably Ricky Stewart was alluding to. You know, is you're going beyond criticism of performance. You know,
it's a horrific insinuation, Braith. That teammates would do this sort of thing. Yeah. So, you know, obviously Tim Watford, I spoke to Tim Watford on the way in. He repeated what he said in the article. Yeah. That's not what it is. So, all right, just got to take him on face value.
The Bulldogs were in cruise control against the Broncos, leading 18 points to 0 with 20 minutes on the clock. But with their prize signing in the halves, things began to unravel.
This time, the more conventional bomb on the last. No one wants a bar of this. Sexton coming through. Can't quite get a boot to it. Picked up by Kickow. Kickow is over. Mem using his running game. Then giving it to Karapani. Karapani one-on-one. Beautiful footwork. And Josiah Karapani is in. Walters to Reynolds. Deep for Mem. Mem gets it on. Oh, yes. Deloise Hoyter. Brisbane get two in a row. The short play, and he's over Walters. Billy Walters scores. Brisbane, oh, they're still coming. Mayor brilliant. Oh, is a chance. They're over. Piakura scores. Brisbane have done it. They've overcome an 18-point deficit to take the lead. This is remarkable. They have come from the clouds to stun the Canterbury Bulldogs.
That was the turning point, thanks to Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres, and the Dogs blow the team up to accommodate for Galvin. That's a bit extreme, but
It's not that extreme.
Well, it is an extreme.
Pretty extreme.
Sorry?
It is an extreme.
Well, you have a think about it. Reid Marnie's gone from an 80-minute player to a 50-minute player. Then the weekend he went back to an 80-minute player. Sexton's gone from half to hooker. Bailey Hayward's gone from starting to the bench. Matt Burton's gone from 5'8" to centre. Montoya's changed from one wing to the other wing.
But that was Origin-related, Buzz. It was because they were missing players for Origin. That's not Galvin-related, that's Origin-related.
Is it?
Well, Burton played centres because Crichton wasn't available.
Yeah, but
not because of Galvin.
You don't think it was done to fit Galvin in? And
He moved to centres on the weekend.
you know as well as I do, Burton.
Crichton wasn't there.
You know
On the
as...
weekend.
Yeah, but they moved him to the centres and he's a 5'8".
Yeah.
Yeah,
Other teams,
Well, you're saying that's
Brady-
only because of Origin? You don't think they were putting him there to see if Burton looked all right in the
No,
centres?
I don't think so, no.
Really?
Well, we know he's a good centre. We've seen him play in the centres before.
Very good 5'8" in great form
He is,
too.
and he will
So
be.
why-
Already
And he'll be back there
So
next,
you've moved him to accommodate Galvin?
and he'll be back there next week.
Well, he will be now after last week.
Where will Galvin be this week?
I don't know, Braith.
That's
What
the
if,
problem.
just
that-
quickly on that,
but
quickly on that, but
that's-
if Galvin had played good on the weekend, would Burton have been back to 5'8"?
Yes.
You definitely.
Well, I believe he would have, yeah.
You believe he would have?
Yeah. Well, you believe he wouldn't have.
I believe they were testing it, and if that had worked, there's a fair chance Galvin stays in the halves and Burton in the centre.
Also, Crichton doesn't play. We're chucking him out the
No,
team. do
Crichton's
we?
playing. Maybe
Okay.
Sherry misses out.
Oh, Cherry missed out. He's had a pretty good
Okay, so
year.
it's all clear. It's clear.
But that's-
clear.
that's the whole
So you
thing.
think-
I think that,
do you know
that
more than
part,
us?
That part, I think, is very clear.
Is it?
Yes. Yes.
What else is clear?
Well, that's all we've discussed so far, isn't it? What else would I know? The other parts aren't
okay.
clear. I don't know whether he'll be in the team next week. I don't know, Braith. But I know
So
that
do-
Steve Crichton will be back in the team. And
Do
Matt
you,
Burton,
do
of
you,
course
do you,
he will be. That
you don't
wasn't the
think there's any
question.
confusion at Canterbury right now about the future, long term, of each of their players? We've got the
Well, no,
half
no, because
going. We've got hold on.
There's not confusion. We know what they're doing now. Sexton and Barney are going. We know that.
Just hold on, Reedy. They were leading the competition up until a week ago.
Yep.
Then they dismantle the football side. They give the permission for the hooker to go, and they don't offer Sexton anything. These two boys, 2 of the 4 in the spine. What are you looking like that? Because they took him to the top of the competition.
Sexton's been off contract all year. They haven't made it off to him all year. Why is it suddenly an issue in the last 4 weeks? And I'll tell you what else, Buzz. You know what they've done the last 9 weeks? Let's go back 9 weeks, because Lachlan Galvin wasn't there 9 weeks ago. They got spanked by Broncos, spanked by the Dolphins. They've won 5 of their last 9. They've lost 4 of the last 9 games. And 2 of those losses when Galvin wasn't there.
You're off the planet, mate.
The Broncos one was a one-off loss, right? They had a bad night. It was
They got
pissing
spanked by the Dolphins.
That was months ago. And then
Reedy, they were
that was
losing
months
6
ago.
weeks
And
ago.
the Dolphins was
Exactly.
similar. They had Origin players out, and it was pissing down rain as well.
Like on the weekend,
It was a similar night. So you can't. Honestly, like I said it throughout the week. Said it on the weekend. I love the Dogs. I want them to win the comp. I want them to win every week. But if you're telling me, if you can sit here and keep a straight face and tell me that there's been no disruption or interruption to that team with Galvin going there, then...
Can I ask you, 2 weeks ago they played Penrith. What did we say? That was grand final worthy.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. Well, Galvin was there then.
Yeah, off the bench.
So that didn't seem like
And he came on when the Bulldogs were winning.
Okay, exactly, but at the
And
weekend,
then what happened?
they didn't have any Origin players, so they had to shuffle
It's
things
not Galvin's
around.
fault, this, by the way, at all. Not at all.
Right. At the weekend, they had to make changes because players were out. So they were always going to make changes at the weekend. There was always going to be a reshuffle, right?
You had to move Burton, did you? Yeah.
Well,
did you have to move Burton?
yeah, well, that was
you
the
answer the question.
Well, you didn't have to,
they
but
didn't
what's it
have
matter?
to.
So they chose to move Burton?
Yes, they
So
chose
they
to
didn't
move
have
Burton.
to.
Why did they move?
Was that an issue at 18-0, was it?
Brett,
Was it
just
an
a
issue at 18-0?
No,
It was an issue when they lost the game.
Yeah, because they dropped the ball in the second half. The completion was 50-odd%
Why
in
did
the
they
second
drop the
half.
ball, Reedy?
Because, I don't know, Brad.
Did you see a lot of
but they
those
made
drop
a lot of
balls?
errors. A lot of them were Galvin, some of them were Galvin related, yes, but they all weren't. They completed 50-odd% in the second half. They were 18-0 up. No one had an issue with the changes, 18-0 up. Second half, they come out, made too many errors, and Ezra Mam got the Broncos
Really,
home.
can I ask a Bulldogs fan question?
Yeah.
Do you reckon everybody's happy with what's happening there?
As in players at the club? No, probably not. Toby Sexton's had to leave. Reid Marnie's leaving. No, I'd say they wouldn't be happy.
Do you think anyone else will be asked to leave? You know, they've got Big Thompson from Newcastle coming in on $800,000 a year, which is double the money Max King's on, double the money Preston's on. Who's going to be next to go?
I don't know. I'm not on the recruitment committee.
Yeah.
Do you think Galvin's arrival has accelerated the Sexton and Marnie to leave?
No, I don't. Not the Sexton one. No, because I think he's always been.
Galvin? I mean, Marnie?
Well, I don't. Reid Marnie, his manager asked for permission in the off-season to explore his options. So that was, again, always on the cards. I mean, it's probably accelerated a little bit because Galvin's arrived, but that's been on the cards for a long time, Braith. We've talked about it previously on this show, that Marnie and his management asked for permission to explore their options because the Dogs weren't in a position.
Why'd they ask for permission?
Because they went to the Dogs to ask, well, my understanding is Sam went to the Dogs to ask about an extension, and the Dogs at that point, Gus must have said, we're not in position to give you an extension. This was in the pre-season. So he asked for permission to go to market. That was well before Galvin was on
Did you hear that Marnie was on the nose before then?
What's that?
Did you hear that Marnie was on the nose before then, or...?
Well, I haven't heard he's on the nose now.
Okay.
Well, he was, and I'm surprised.
He was on the nose before then?
Yes, he was.
So it's not Galvin related?
No, look,
Okay.
I've spoken to people at Canterbury who've been worried about his discipline for quite some time and the fact for a number of years, he's been the most heavily penalised player in the game.
So that's not Galvin related? You just confirmed it's not Galvin related?
I don't know if it's Galvin related or not.
You just said it wasn't.
Well, you asked the question, was he, or Braith did, was he on or was he off, right?
Yeah.
Was it Galvin related? Was it Thompson related? They have to free up money in the cap. I think their long-term plan is to pay Bailey, Haywood and Hooker.
I think it is.
That's what their plan is. Doesn't take away from the point I'm trying to make is you reckon you want to go back 9 weeks. 2 weeks ago, they were leading the competition. Now half of the spine that took them there have been shown the door. True.
It's a unique situation.
In my time,
very unique.
And we've been saying it for weeks, right? And they could find their feet here, but still, right now, everyone's sitting here, and I'm sure they are. I think for the first time, Ciraldo would have to be thinking, "Oh, what do I like? This is his toughest test, I believe, apart from the rebuild, is now they've got there, is what do I do now? What move do I make that's going to benefit our team? And in the process of this, unfortunately, which just will happen, is other players are impacted and affected by it. You know, they're going to be thinking about where their positions in the team are or what their future lies. And, you know, have we gone backwards here? Do we have a good enough team to win the comp? Are we going to get this right or not? So they've added a whole other dimension they didn't need at this period of the season. Do you not agree with that? Like,
There's no doubt it's added another dimension and another dilemma for Cameron Ciraldo. But there's time to work it out.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is
they've got
time.
themselves in a really
There is
good
time.
position. I think I said it a week or two ago. I think they just need to make a call and stick with it.
Yeah.
Whether it's Sexton or Galvin, you know, I'd
Make a
put
call,
Galvin
or maybe
in.
Galvin
but
in reserve grade.
No, I don't think you put him in reserve grade.
Well, you
reckon the Bulldogs
know,
will-
there's some pretty good judges who are suggesting that. I heard Greg Alexander on the Super Saturday talking about his performance, and he said he can't find a spot for Lachlan in the starting 17. And, you know, Brandy's been around that.
On his performance in the
Yeah,
second half, I can understand why he said it.
and without wanting to quote everyone, I think I heard you say yesterday, Gordon, on radio, that the Dogs bring them in when they brought him in, that would it have been wiser to wait until the end of the season, let West Tigers continue to pay him, and then give him a full off-season, October, November, and then...
But that wasn't feasible because of what was going on with the West Tigers. That just was not feasible. Things were untenable there.
yeah.
It couldn't work that way, Buzz.
There's always been an ethos of...
Why was it untenable at
He was
West
suing the
Tigers?
club. He
Why
was
was
suing
he
the club
suing
and he
the club
accused his
though,
teammates of bullying.
We're going back there again, are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty untenable.
And what was his social media post then?
I don't know, Cordy.
One thing about the
No, but
Bulldogs...
what was it then?
What was that, about when he posted
Yeah.
about talent?
Yeah.
I don't know, he's put a clapping emoji or something.
But
didn't he?
this kid's very talented, and he's going to be a success story there. But I know one thing about the Bulldogs is every player that's ever played there's had to earn their jersey and earn that right. And I feel like it's just been handed to him a little bit too easily, and it has impacted other players there. And that's something they need to look at, I think.
Can I say one other thing? There's 3 other clubs in the top 4. There's the Canberra Raiders, there's Melbourne Storm, and there's New Zealand Warriors. Are we talking about them chopping, changing, halfback out, hooker out? It's not happening.
On the weekend, yeah, Melbourne made a lot of changes on the weekend, bro.
No.
A heap of
I
changes.
agree with you.
Jonah Pezzett played.
They had half their teams in origin.
Like the Dogs.
No, what?
You've lost it there,
I
mate.
agree.
You've lost your...
Guys,
Mate, I can't even talk to you anymore after that.
The number 7 and number 9 wasn't playing
Excuse
Origin.
me, that is not what I was talking about. I'm talking about next year and the next 3 years.
You're doing so well, man.
You know, they signed Brayley from Newcastle, right? They didn't want to move him. So they'll slide him in the off-season.
I just told you why he had to go now. You know why he had to leave mid-season. You know it was untenable at the Tigers.
But what I'm saying is, you know...
All right, let's move on. You know, Buzzy, your Monday buzz. You went pretty hard on Gus.
Oh, well, look, all I did I go hard on him? I gave him a rap, actually. I said, no. Well, I did.
That's a back end.
Well, you want to hear what I wrote?
I read it, yeah.
I said that no one can build a premiership team like Phil Gould. I then said, but can he actually deliver a title? And I pointed out that it's been 23 years since 2002 when Ricky Stewart coached the Roosters and Gus said since he had any silverware. That's all I pointed out.
What you said was all facts, mind you.
Completely factual.
Yeah.
Completely factual. And he did the same thing at Penrith. Exactly the same. Set them up. Pathways, everything brilliant. They couldn't win a title, he left. He brought in Jamie Soward and he punted Jamie Soward. He brought in Marnie. Marnie didn't see. Brought in Trent Merritt, said he captain just got rid of him. Did the same with Ivan. He was tired, signed Griffin, etc. All I did was point out the facts. He's the best set-up man in the business to build a thriving football club. But the fact of the matter is he cannot go that extra step and deliver a title.
He's done a great job, though.
Absolutely.
But you're
has.
questioning whether he can actually get the
Mate,
premiership.
I wrote this morning, they have the best pathways in the NRL. He's set them up. He doesn't have the junior base, he's stockpiling juniors.
Do you think he's just overstepped the mark on this occasion? Is that what you're saying?
I think they've had this massive mid-season upheaval that they didn't need to have. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
And there is a history of this happening at his previous clubs.
Rudy, respond.
Disagree. Go on, off you go. Is it true? 23 years.
Yeah, that's true. You've done your
23
research, yeah. I feel like at times it's like Supercoach for him. You know, he's going out and trying to build the perfect team at times, and it involves some tinkering. And they're a better team with Lachlan Galvin in it. In my opinion, they're a better team. Now, maybe we didn't see it in the second half on Friday night, right? But I think Lachlan Galvin will eventually be a great signing for them.
Yeah.
And maybe it might be as early as later this year when they're in the finals and Galvin's in the number 7 jersey and maybe they win a comp with him there.
But I go back to my other point. Those other 3 top 4 clubs are so settled, and all they're worried about is this next 9 weeks and the finals. There's no upheaval. There's no confusion. There's no players walking on eggshells. They're settled.
I reckon if you could say to the Warriors, we've got a halfback for you, I reckon they'd probably take him right now.
Yeah,
given
they
they lost
lost
Luke
Steve.
Metcalf. Yeah. So they'd be happy to take
What are you talking about?
I'm saying they'd be happy to take
That's
him.
obvious, mate.
Why not? But you're saying that they're happy to settle.
We're talking about
I'm
the
saying if they can
situation,
go and
and
get
the
someone,
Dogs,
they go
the
and get
Dogs
them.
didn't need to do it, though. That's the whole
Well,
point here.
Gus obviously thought they did.
Really?
Well, what do you reckon? Why else would he go and get the
Don't you
bloke?
think that's a bit crazy? Given they were coming first and second, was playing really good.
I'm not going to turn around now and say it was crazy. When I said
really?
for weeks it was a great decision.
Really? Yeah.
And their spine, I've said it from the
The
start of the year.
signing's a great decision,
I said from
Rudy.
the start of the
The signing
year.
is a great decision.
Yeah.
But the actual, to interrupt the team effective immediately.
No, because Braith, I said from the start of the year, if you remember, you guys asked me, can the Dogs win the comp? And I said the spine's not good enough.
Hey, really?
Right, and then now got a bloke who can slot in.
There's better ways to do business. The Raiders are letting go their number 7, and they haven't chopped anybody around. They're not chopping and changing. They're letting him finish the year with a bit of respect, and they're still going on the way up.
And they planned for this by bringing in the young fella. What's the young fella from Parramatta?
Ethan Sanders.
Ethan Sanders. This was planned.
The Dogs got Mitch Woods there too, by the way.
They have, yeah.
Stick around, journos, as we head to the break. Let's take a look at our Sportsbet Player of the Round nominees for round 18.
Beautifully done. Charlie Staines. Smith. Oh, this time Savala's dropped it. And Lachlan Galvin is on his way. All the way for the Tigers. They're going to try the crash play. Sione is there. This time throws a nice pass off the deck. Dewey ball. Oh, Tigers. Adam Dewey for Samuela Fayunu. Savala. Tedesco. Cut it ball. Great ball, Rodwell's got his chance. Great defence, Tigers.
It's Latu Fayinu who just launches his body.
This win means a lot, not just for us, but for the fans, and especially our coach.
Now they're in their own in goal, and the Tigers have won 6 straight losses. It comes to an end. Tigers 30, Roosters 28.
There's a lot of shit that happened during the week that was just not true and unfair and starts because we're losing. And we're in the any juniors go. They didn't want to be here. The Latus and Samuelas and those guys, Luke Lilies, they want to be here. And today, they were outstanding.
Welcome back. That was our moment of the round. Thanks to Ford. The Fainu brothers were on fire. So were the West Tigers, ending a 6-game losing streak. And the West Tigers, are back. And Benji, you had plenty to say in the press conference after that win, didn't he?
Yeah, well, and so he should have. That was a really good performance. The orange jerseys yesterday turned up. Defensively in the first half, they were outstanding, the Tigers. And the Roosters, they come back. Mark Nawada-Wase was really good. He was fantastic. Kept them in the game with Teddy, but the Tigers were really good. All those young guys put their body on the line, and that's their standard from now on.
Played well.
Yeah, they did. They needed it desperate. But look, and don't want to poo on the party. Well, the Roosters were without 13 players and they scored 5 tries to 4. So there's still a long way to go for that West Tigers side. But what I did like about them, they had players out too, and they played that they were gutsy. Players out too. They had their 3 probably highest paid players out. Jerome Buller, that's why I mentioned
and no Lachlan Galvin and Talon Silva. That's fine.
No, I did. They did all they could, and they tackled so gutsy, so courageous.
I mean, Latu Fanu was amazing for them yesterday, both. But
defensively, he was.
I was going to say, Gordy, that was the thing. Defensively, he came up with 1 try saver at least, and that's why the club's got high hopes for him down the track, that he can be the player I think everyone thought he'd be, and we saw a little glimpse of it on the weekend. I was really happy for him, really happy for Benji and Richo, because they made some really difficult decisions.
I was happy for Benji and the team, and I love the style in which they played too. Yesterday,
he was aggro, though, wasn't he, after the game? He was aggro after the game.
You kept giving it to him.
He was.
I don't give it to him at all. I don't give it to him at all.
Maroon Hooker Harry Grant has wrapped Cameron Munster's bravery after his father's tragic passing.
It is a tough time for Cam and, the immediate family, the extended family, and I think the best way we can support him is throwing our arm around him and is with our performance and our preparation. Cameron Munster, captaining Queensland, brings so much pride to the whole of his family, and, Stevie boy would love to see him out there. I think it's very brave the way that he's handling the situation. It shows the strength and character of Cam, and more importantly, how much the Maroon means to him. There's plenty of motivation for us as Queenslanders to make Queensland proud on Wednesday night. This is just another thing to be able to wrap our arms around our mate and make him and his family proud as well.
Yeah, it's been a tough few days for Cam. Really feeling for him and his mum and family, and from everyone here at Fox League, we wish you all the best, mate. It's the sudden passing of his dad. I know he's made his dad very proud over the years, and his dad got a lot of joy out of watching him play and seeing him play that game as captain for Queensland. And as hard as it is for Cam, and he's struggling a bit at the moment, hopefully he can get out there on Wednesday night and do his dad proud yet again. So it's a bit of a tough one for him.
Yeah, I think Queenslanders, I said yesterday, I totally understand if he doesn't play. I think, where your mental state, it's a decider. I know rugby league, at the end of the day, it's a game that we all love. But if he's not right, I think every single Queenslander would totally understand. But if he wants to pull on the maroon jersey, it just shows, as what Harry Grant said, the courage that he's got to go out there and lead our great state into a massive battle.
I spoke to his wife Bianca, as you know, for a piece of my column last week about Cameron, and she spoke about the family pride of Cameron, of where he came back from during the COVID years, and he had a lot of struggles in his life, where he's developed as a father, great father. And to captain Queensland, his dad was there to see that. It is so fortunate for Cameron, and I'm sure he'll be saying to himself, Dad would want me to play, Dad will want me to win, and he'll be there on Wednesday night. I
can't imagine what he's going through, and feel for him and his family at the moment. And as Scotty said, if he didn't want to play Origin at the moment, I could completely understand it. But really tough times.
Yeah. Pretty tough. We're thinking about you, mate. Thank you, Reedy, and thank you, Buzz. Up next,
you,
it's Heavy Hitters with West Tigers CEO Shane Richardson. Now it's time for Heavy Hitters with Shane Richardson. Richo, thanks for joining us on Heavy Hitters.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, guys.
You've had a huge career and a very successful one, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But there's a lot of noise around at the Tigers. Yesterday was congratulations. Very good win. How important was that win?
Yeah, it was important. I just think the players stood up and said to the world that this crap about Benji is just crap. I mean, you don't play like that with all the players we had out yesterday without having a real commitment to the coach. And the article was written early in the week, which, and I understand journalism and, clickbait and, all the rest of it, but agenda-driven journalism is not true. It's just not true. And the lies that were written in the article was very difficult for Benji to take. He's got a thick skin, but he just felt, and the players particularly just felt, they knew it wasn't true. Adam Dewey knew it wasn't true. I've never even met Paul McGregor, so how I was going to get him as a coach, I don't know. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that it was a statement by the players about what they feel about Benji.
Well, he looked emotional, and he wasn't happy about that article. And he's had a tough time, Benj. Like, I spoke to Mill, and he was comfortable. Everything was going really well, and I love Benji. I think he's got great potential as a coach. How do you think he's handled it so far?
Look, I think let's look at it this way, guys. I mean, you guys, everybody in the press were bagging up West Tigers for the last 3 or 4 years and how terrible they were and they weren't getting any better and all the rest of it. He's taken on a job that not many people would have ever taken on. He's taken it on without coaching before in the history of the game. He took it on because in a lot of ways they gave him the blazer because he was the one that kept trying to give them some face in that marketplace, let's be honest about it. And then all of a sudden the Tim Sheens thing happened and he inherited the side. He inherited a tough roster, which I believe there's only 22 of the 36 players who could play NRL. Yeah. So he had no depth to work with. We ran last in reserve grade. He's taken on that challenge and worked forward. This year, we've gone in with the changes we could make, and he's got better and better. He will be the first to say he was stunned when he went in there. But mate, he learns every day. You see, you can't learn if you don't want to learn. You can't learn if you're not intelligent. He's intelligent, and he's there for one reason and one reason only. I can assure you with Benji, it's not about the money. Yeah. It's about the actual want to make West Tigers successful again. So he's taken on an unenviable task, and I think he's done a great job.
Richard, there was a bit of optimism with the young kids coming through. The Lachlan Galvin situation, how did that unfold? You were right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting that both those, they're very different, him and the young hooker. I mean, Lachie just didn't want to be there. I mean, he told us up front he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be involved with Benji as the coach. He wanted to move on to otherwise, which is great. He made that decision. Then we had to make a decision after that.
Did that hurt though, Richard?
Well, it hurt Benji, but it hurt me too because I never want to lose a junior. And when I got there, I mean, I watched the tapes before I went there and I could see what a player he was and we could build a club around him, and we did. We named him straight away in the first grade side at 5'8". No one had ever heard of him. Look, and he's going to be a great kid, but you know, he's got a way of looking at things which for his betterment, and I hope he's successful. I think he will be successful. He's a good player. But you know, so we had to make a call about what was best for the club and what was best for the squad. I mean, the old days of the Bulldogs, when you would have been there, mate, somebody said that, you would have been around them with tar and feathering. But we didn't do that, and so we had to move on. The other one was different though. The other one was a young kid who made it clear to us that he wanted to be there, and to his parents. I went and saw his parents 2 weeks before this happened, and said, look. And they asked, if Appy signs, we want him to be able to move on. Now, that would have meant him moving on the following year. We could have held him, but we wouldn't have, because from a cap point of view, it would have been better. And so we actually approached Newcastle and said, look, not about him at all. Yeah. So, well, we'd like to get KPP now. We've got enough money in the cap. We've got a fair bit of money in the cap. Yeah. And the bottom line was, and they said, yep. But then they came back and said, no, we want to do a player swap. Can the kid come for just this year, rest of the year? And I said, yeah, no problems at all, we'll do that. And I talked to the kid and he was quite keen to go. Bottom line was, then they came back and said, no, we want to sign him longer term. So then I had to put a situation to him. Do I put him on the market now? Yeah. Or do I, because I still thought he could go to Newcastle, or I get KPP. Yeah. But as it turned out, his manager asked me, and I told his parents that if we decided to sign, so in that period, we made the final decision to sign Appy Coruscant. Which, you know, it's a similar decision, I think I spoke to you about what South had to go through. They chose a way, whether it was right or wrong about Adam, and it's the same with Appy. But we've chosen that his loyalty, his leadership, we don't have a lot of senior leadership in our club. That's why we bought Luai. And we felt that going forward, that Appy's done the right thing by the club, and more importantly, he's still an outstanding player. Yeah. And Fijians, you know, people say he's this and he's that age, but Fijians seem to play forever. So we'll see where we go. Sorry, mate.
What about the rumours over the weekend that Appy hasn't signed?
No, he hasn't signed, but we're
You're very close.
Yeah, we sort of accelerated the process when we decided that we were going to let. Because we hadn't made that final decision, but when we made that final, we accelerated about 2 weeks ago, and we're well down the track with his manager and Appy, and you know, Appy will be with us. Yeah.
Do you think you can keep Appy and Jerome there? It's pretty important to keep those two guys now, isn't it?
Yeah,
and Jerome's got his clauses, right?
Yeah, he's got a clause next year.
What's the situation with all that?
Yeah, he's got a clause next year that if he chooses, he can pull out the following year. But he's shown no signs to me not to be absolutely. I mean, he was there yesterday. He was there. You know, he's showed no sign to me about not being the leader we've always thought he would be. You know, he's been outstanding for us. If we only have him for 2 years out, but I think he'll be here for the long term. I've got no doubt he will be.
Would you try and get those clauses taken out?
Yeah, I probably could. I mean, I get on well with his manager. His manager's Latrell's manager, as you know, and manager. But you see, one of the things you've got to remember, mate, you're building a club, and this is what I say. Well, our club was reviewed as being no one would want to go there. We were rubbish and everything else. What you've got to do is build a club where people want to be there. Yeah. Now, Lachie didn't want to be there. That's fine. If Jerome didn't want to be there because we weren't creating the club that we wanted, then that's what it does. But I think we're creating a club internally and as a club generally that players will want to be at. And I think that the challenge of him leading us through to a final series is something that Jerome Luai, as he said, it's all about the rings, Richard.
And he's got plenty of them.
So, yes. And mate, he's a great... You don't understand what a great leader... And we've lacked that.
Talk us through that a bit. So what's he like, Jerome, around the group? We know what he's like on the field. He's a winner. He's a competitor. What does he bring off the field to to the boys, to the camp?
Well, Tito brings never shutting up and playing really bad, loud music in the dressing room. But Jerome's a leader. He thinks things through. He's really caring. He gives us his opinion. He doesn't just go along with the coach. If he's got a thought, he gives it. He brings leadership. Great training ethos. Fantastic attitude. Look, we couldn't ask for a better person to have got to the club and to pay the money we paid for him was a nick. And I shouldn't say that, he probably want more when he goes forward. But I'm being funny. But it's a nick because he's a great leader, and that's why Appy's a great leader. Outside of that, we've got a lot of young leaders, really good young leaders, but they're still only young. Sam Fainu is going to be a great leader in the club. May is going to be a great leader in the club, but he's just arrived. So we really need that experience of people like him and Appy who've won, because we haven't won for a long while.
Just back on the Galvin quickly, I won't be a sec, but I remember, because we're on the show, we obviously spoke about it a lot, and at one point you said that you weren't going to let him go, and then you let him go. What changed there?
Well, I honestly thought, when I sat down with his manager and I was about to offer him the contract, and the manager said he doesn't want to be here, it was a bit of a shock for me. I've never had 32 years, I've never had anybody say they don't even want to look at a deal. And I'm not bagging the management or him for it, that's what he said. And so from then it was a shock. So I walk away from that saying, well, he's not going anywhere, and I don't want. But as the weeks went on and it rolled over and over, and there was no sign, and don't worry, we asked, there was no sign of him reneging on that, then it became obvious that a decision had been made for the betterment of the club in the long term, and the playing group more particularly in the short term. And so we made that decision.
Because you had the legal stuff going on too.
Yeah,
right?
we did. We won't get into legal stuff because I'll get it. But you're right, it was going, but that had no real effect on the decision. Okay. Honestly, it didn't. It had no real effect at all. And the board was united behind what we wanted to do. But it wasn't anything to do with the legal stuff. It was more to do with what are we trying to build here as a team, and is he going to be part of it?
What are some of the biggest challenges? Because you've been successful at a lot of the clubs that you've gone to. Is there success around the corner for the Tigers?
Yeah, there is. See, people, there are all these experts about bringing a club. They want West Tigers to be successful. They sort of do, but they don't. But at the end of the day, you've got to worry about your own self and what you're building. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to put a proper corporate governance in place. We never had that. We have got it now. We've got 4 independent directors there. The shareholding situation is working out what happens to the shareholders' agreements going forward. But we've actually put in place an independent board. So that's important. Then you've got to pass it on with governance to the CEO. Now, I wouldn't have signed the contract I did if I didn't have complete control as the CEO and true governance. And there's not been one decision that I've made that they haven't been supported. Then the third thing you've got to do is go in and see who the people you've got in the club and who do you put in there to make the club better around the place. And we made changes straight away, but we made very little changes since. And 3 years ago, we had a 36% staff turnover. Last year, we had a 27%. This year, we've got a 13%. So we've stabilised the club there. We've stabilised the club financially. So, and you've got to have, without like it or not, you've got to have the. So we lost $5 million over 2 years. This year we'll make a profit. We owe no money to anybody. Holman Barnes, anybody else owes no money, and we'll have $1 million in the bank at the end of the year. So we're cash flow friendly now. Those things can't happen if you haven't rearranged the club. Then you get onto your roster, and your roster you've got to work at, is the coach good enough? And I never knew Benji before I got here. And I've seen interesting text between Benji and I when I first started, by the way. But at the end of the day, I grew to realise, and probably through the prompting of Wayne, to be totally honest, just how smart he was and how good he could be. And mate, he's done nothing but want to learn. He's made mistakes, he's made errors, but he's owned up to them. And mate, cleaning out players from a roster is the most difficult job in the world because no one's happy. The managers aren't happy, the players aren't happy. But you know what you've got to do. And, Gill's going through it at what's that? You've got to make these tough calls that are not always popular. He's now thought that Galvin's going to make a better spot for him. That's a decision he makes. What I'm saying to you, though, is they're not easy decisions and they eat away at you if you don't stick together. If you start saying, like they were going on, like, Richo wants this kid and he wants... Well, it's never been the same. We've made decisions all together. We've got the roster into a really good space at the moment. Our fans can go to a game now and think they can win.
Richo, how
they couldn't before.
How special was it breaking the drought at the mighty South Sydney Rabbitohs?
Yeah, well, you were there, mate, on the way. I always say,
and you should have been there, bro.
No, you should have, because we went from poor to let's be honest, shit to poor to average to competitive and then on.
Yeah.
And you came in at the very poor to average stage with Johnny Lang. And Langy took on a 2-year deal with us.
Langy turned him around a lot.
He did. That's what I'm going to say. My two great mentors in life are John Lang for sport and
I learned a lot off him.
And a great mate called John Moore, unfortunately died last week, was one of the great administrators in Queensland. And what they taught me was about sticking together, making tough decisions. And when we put Langy in for those 2 years, I told him, mate, you can win the premiership, you're not going to be there, because I needed the time to go out without going behind the coach's back to find somebody. So we did that, and Langy was a great transition to getting Madge to go under the greatness of the club. And there was no greater feeling. One thing about South Sydney, and whether you play juniors there or you come through, there's a feeling in South Sydney that you don't get anywhere else. And people say, "Oh, you've been to all these clubs," and I have, but nothing affected me as much as South Sydney. And they were tough times, mate. I mean, they were terribly tough times, And but at the end of the day, you've got to be persistent. You've got to have a plan. You've got to stick together. And I had a great board that did that with me.
It was an amazing achievement, one for the ages. Now, Buzz, earlier, he said you've had some ups and downs.
Yes.
Now, I'm not necessarily saying Buzz, but you would have had a lot of clashes and battles throughout your career, as we all do.
Did you give anybody life?
Even with us. What's some a story you could tell us about any of that?
Well, people forget that I was in the heart of the Super League war. I was in the heart of it with Cronulla. I mean, I signed all the players, but I didn't even know about it until and then I signed all the players because Johnny Lang wasn't like a Bennett. He signed the players. I had to sign it. It was in Perth, and I come back and it was all because they showed us a paper showing that all the Broncos had signed. And I thought, well, and all the players were showing that, so they all signed except a couple. Then I fly back to Sydney. And it's an absolute shit fight. And they hadn't signed, and Bennett's saying, "Oh, well, we haven't made a decision yet." And so I'm there. We were the first club, the only club to sign, because we're in Perth. And so it was. And then the board called me in, who put me up to it. I didn't know News Limited, I knew anybody. And they had called me in and told me they had to sack me because there was too much pressure on them. So I've gone from over in Perth, coming back, and then out of a job with 3 kids moved to Sydney from Queensland, who no one liked me anyway. So at the end of the day, it was a really tough time. Then fortunately, News Limited employed me as a recruiter, me and Schnoz O'Connor. We travelled around the world diving in and out of toilets, and so that was a big time. And then the second time was a tougher time for me. I came to Sydney with this great view of the great players, the Johnny Rapers, and George Pickens was one of them. He was a great player. And then to have to be in that war on Russell's side for that taking over South Sydney, and it was a really tough time for me, and it was. I don't just say that, but I tried to make the decision that I felt was best for the club, and I think it turned out to be that way. George always felt he was making the decision, and I think George would have loved the club to death because he was just that great guy, So that was a tough time, and the battles there. You've got to remember, the headlines on the morning of the thing was Richardson's got to be sacked. So I've been got to be sacked a few times. Buzz has got it out there a few times.
Do you know what? Tigers might get rid of you. Have you changed your mind on Vegas? Are Tigers going to get the Vegas?
Yeah, look, mate, my mind hasn't changed on Vegas. See, this is what sometimes they just like to write what they want to write. What I said to Peter Volandis and to the NRL is this: when you put it to us, where is the accountability? And where's the transparency? Now, if you want to say to me, I'm going to spend $10 million going to Vegas and lose $10 million because we're going to get this much publicity, I would say go for it. But it was going on the basis that we were going to make money and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. My background's finance and accounting. I 13 years in finance, ran a finance company. I know all about the numbers, and all I wanted to do was see the numbers. Now, Vegas has been a huge success. Peter's got the ability to shoot for the stars and just knock out Mars, and it's been a huge. So I'm not against it. But what I'm saying to you is that's what was my stance. Would we go? How could we go? We're on the bottom of the ladder. We lost $5 million. We're in we're a shit fight for our survival. And now I'm going to take them across on a post-season trip to Vegas on a pre-season trip. We weren't ready for it, and we still aren't. We'll go to Vegas, but we'll probably be the 17th or 18th team.
Good on you, Richo. I really appreciate you coming on face to face. It's never easy, and you've had an amazing career, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
No worries. Up next, we reveal our player of the round, and following us, it's the latest edition of Matty and Cronk. Welcome back. Our player performance of the round is Kyo Weeks with 56% of the vote. Gordy, how good was he the other day?
Absolutely. All the young talent in our game, but he stood above them all on the weekend.
Fantastic. Those 300 metres, 3 tries, and couldn't get much better. That's it for NL 360
Thanks, mate.
for tonight. Now it's time for Matty and Cronk.